Hey everybody. When I hear the word Congress, I think of a bunch of old white rich guys, people that have been elected into office for decades, running the same thing over and over. Basically, it's their job now to be in the office. So, congressional term limits is a new idea that's been gaining traction in recent years as a way to help keep those people focused on what they were actually elected into office on and less on getting rich in the process. Surprisingly, it's very easy for Congress to get rich in the process of passing our laws. So, I'm going to give you guys a quote. One of the key problems today is that politics is such a disgrace. Good people don't go into the government. This quote kind of sums up that there's a lot of corruption in the government and uh, there's a lot of cleaning up to do. So if there's not good people in the government, why is that? Why are they being elected? Because they're able to trick the public into consistently believing their promises while they are behind the scenes passing laws that contradict it. That quote was actually said by Donald Trump back on February 15th of the year 2000 in an interview for The Advocate, which was pro-LGBT magazine in the time. Now in 2019, more than ever, Donald Trump was correct. People in politics are a disgrace, and good people are not in government. Term limits is a way to help end those career politicians' roles, get them out of the government, and get new people with fresh promises to the public that they represent back into the government. So what exactly is a term limit? Well, first off, a term is what you call a time frame that that person is elected into office. Presidents have 4-year terms. Local government, it's usually 2. Congress is 4, but it's every other. So term limits are the restrictions on how many times that person can be elected into that position. The president, for example, has a 2-term limit. Once you get elected president 2 times, you can never be president of the United States again. That was actually implemented back in 1947. That was a direct result of President Roosevelt being elected 4 times in a row, the 4th one in 1944. So by 1947, Congress had worked out a way to impose those term limits and get him out of office. Why exactly do we need term limits? Well, for one, it keeps politicians focused on why they're there. Politicians are elected into government to make the lives of their constituents better. So keeping them on a deadline is one way to keep them accountable for why they're there. It's also going to help limit the influence that corporations are going to have on lobbying, which is essentially a legal bribe to the government official. The corporation's going to come in, hand $100,000 to them, and that person's going to give them certain laws that's going to make it easier for that corporation to gain money. So that's something we really need to focus on. That's probably the biggest reason we need term limits. Also, the diversity is going to increase. As I mentioned earlier, it's a lot of old, rich white men, so by having term limits, we're going to get them out and open the doors for hopefully more women or minorities to get involved. So who exactly in the world supports term limits? According to a survey conducted in 2018 by McLaughlin and Associates, over 80% of the United States public supports term limits on Congress. That's a pretty striking number. In addition to that 80% of the general public, we know the president supports them. He's made comments before about the people in politics being very corrupt, very dishonest, so he's going to support getting more of a revolving door policy. Congress supports them, surprisingly. Back in 1947, they passed that law that the president has to have term limits, so they know the power of putting these laws into effect. In the past, our forefathers have even talked about term limits. George Washington, John Adams, and a few others have mentioned it. It never got voted into an official constitutional law because they never had a reason to. People did not continuously get voted. It was all fresh. So that's one of the reasons it took so long to get implemented. So who do you think would oppose those term limits? For one, Congress, because it's going to limit their ability to get rich when they're supposed to be making our laws. They're going to be kicked out and not powerful enough for those corporations to want to pay off anymore. Next, you're going to get the corporations themselves. It's going to become harder for them to find who they can pay off to get those laws passed, so they're not happy with that. When you talk corporations, you also got to talk the 1%, which is essentially the ultra rich. They also bribe these politicians to get laws passed so that they can lower their taxes or find other ways and loopholes to keep all of their money. There are many obstacles that can be brought up when talking about term limits, but they're usually pretty baseless. One obstacle is the cooperation and sharing of knowledge between somebody who's leaving by a term limit and their fresh replacement. According to Shane Broadway, Speaker of the House in Arkansas, they actually have an orientation set up where when they know somebody new's coming in, they'll have them come out and have some nice casual lunches, sit-down dinners with the current member in the government, just to kind of pass the torch, if you will. It's like a nice casual meeting, helps with the learning curve, any process flows, FYIs, here's my trick. It's just a nice way to do it. So people need to get over their petty differences about party differences. I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm old, I'm new. And they just need to work together because they're there for the people. Another issue that was brought up in an article by Carey, Niney, and Powell was that by having term limits, the people going in and out of the government, the turnover rate's going to be much more. It's hard enough now for people to remember who their congressmen are, people that have been there for decades. Imagine if you're switching it up every 4 to 5, 6 years, putting someone new in there each time. It's going to be harder for them to remember. It's going to be harder for the public to relate with them, which, by the way, if the politician makes a better presence in the public, they can turn that around. It's all about getting back to the roots of they're there for the public. They need to be involved in the public. They need to know what their constituents want, and that way they can help pass those laws to get to make everyone happy, pretty much. So to sum up, term limits help cycle fresh ideas and fresh people into the government. Out with the old, in with the new. It's going to give us new ideas in terms of technology, in terms of cultural differences. It's going to give us a much fresher approach as opposed to an antiquated approach. It's also going to help break down the effectiveness of corporate lobbying. They're not going to know who to target, who to pay off. It's going to be less effective for them. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch today. I hope you learned something new, and if you ever hear anything in the government coming up about term limits being discussed, contact your congressman, let them know what you think, and hopefully you are able to take care of that. All right, well, thank you for your time, and you have a great day.